Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from Delicious Leader 7639. AITA for how I reacted when my niece announced she was engaged. I, 33M, have a pretty big age difference with my brother, 44M. He had a child at 25, which means that I became an uncle at 14. Because we were pretty close in age, I formed a special bond with my niece, Ella, now 18F. When she was 16, my brother and his family moved away, so I've been seeing them less recently, but we keep in touch and catch up at family events. Last year, at Christmas, my niece told me that she had a boyfriend and told me a bit about him, but I didn't know the guy. He was invited for Easter and a couple of other events, but was never able to make it. When we were planning our mother's birthday, my brother decided to invite Ella's boyfriend so that we could all meet him. Yesterday was the birthday. I was looking forward to meeting Mark, Ella's boyfriend, but was very confused when I saw her walk in with a man that looked double her age. Spoiler alert, he is. She introduced him to me, and I politely smiled, but was deep down very concerned. I went to my brother to ask how old Mark was, and he told me that Mark is 36, so literally double Ella's age. She had told me that he was a bit older, but I assumed like early to mid-20s, not almost 40. That's when they called us in the living room to share exciting news. Ella showed us a ring and revealed that they were engaged. I just said, "What the f?" And everyone turned around and looked at me like I was crazy. I told them that they were out of their minds if they thought this was normal, that there was no world in which a 30-something should date an 18-year-old, and that she shouldn't be getting married. All of them accused me of ruining Ella's happiness. Some even said that I was jealous of Mark, which is so disgusting I can't even explain it. I mean, I'm younger than Mark, but never in a million years would I ever consider dating someone younger than 25. They told me that it was perfectly legal, as they were both adults, which isn't true because they've been dating for a year, and Ella turned 18 7 months ago, and that if they were happy, that's all that matters. I told them that they were sick for allowing this and that he was a predator, but they wouldn't listen. I know this isn't my business, but I can't help but fear for Ella. She is young and doesn't really know what she's getting into. I'm really scared of her getting married and being unable to leave him when she realizes how sick it was. I then left and slammed the door, and have been receiving pretty wild messages and calls since then. I don't know if I was wrong for this and I'm just overreacting, and if I wasn't wrong, I don't know what I can do to make them realize how wrong it is. AITA? Update 1. If you didn't see my previous post, here's a TLDR. My niece is 18 and getting married with a man who's 36. They started dating when she was 17. When she announced she was engaged, I said that it was wrong that he was so much older than her, but everyone else found it okay. So, I've taken the past 24H to really reflect on all of this. I tried to take in most of the advice in the comments, and here's what I have decided. I don't think that me telling her and everyone that the relationship is weird was wrong. I do, however, think that I did it wrong, and it was pretty harsh because it was in the heat of the moment. But I still find this very creepy, and don't think she should get married. What I've decided to do is apologize to her. I sent her a text saying I was sorry for my outburst and that I should have thought it through beforehand. I told her that I never wanted to make her feel like I didn't want her to be happy, and that I loved her very much and had her best interests in mind. Ask her if we could talk about this. I asked if she would be okay and free to hang out and maybe get coffee this week to talk about all of this with a clear head. I really want to try and get her to see why it's weird, and that maybe marrying him is not a great choice. Explain myself to my brother. I sent him a text saying that I was sorry for the way I said it, but that I still thought that it needed to be said. I explained to him why I think Mark is a predator, and this relationship could have a very negative and damaging impact on Ella. I'm still waiting on their replies. I'll update when they reply, or when I see Ella, if she accepts, depending on how long it would take. In the meantime, I really want to thank everyone who gave me advice and was constructive, and really tried to help my niece out of this situation. I also send my best to all of the people in the comments sharing similar stories when they were the teenager getting groomed. I'm so sorry this happened to you, and I really hope you're doing better now. Update 2. TLDR of first posts. My 18 niece is engaged to a 36. She started dating when she was 17. No one in the family sees a problem. I asked to meet her to talk about it. So, following my text, see last post, Ella replied and told me she agreed to meet with me and talk. I just came back from seeing her. Here's how it went. She asked me what I wanted to tell her, and I started explaining that I didn't think her relationship was very healthy, and that no older guy should want to date a teenager. I told her that she was an incredible woman, so I wasn't saying it was weird that someone would want to marry her, but that guys my age normally shouldn't even look at a teenager. She wasn't convinced and said that sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's okay. I asked her how she would feel if I told her that someone born today could be her future partner, and she said it felt really weird. I also asked her if she would consider dating someone younger than 15, and she said no. I could see her starting to realize that Mark maybe didn't have the best intentions. I also asked her if she knew about his previous relationship, and she said vaguely, and just told me the girl's name. I asked her if she knew how old the girl was, and she said she was 21. I also asked her if she knew that their relationships overlapped, and she said that Mark always told her he was single since they met, but she kind of felt like that wasn't true. I told her that since his previous girlfriend was also significantly younger, it seemed like he had a thing for younger girls, which is kind of weird. After discussing that, she told me a bit more about her relationship. She told me she was starting to feel weird about it because of Mark's recent behavior. I asked what she meant, and she said that he had been flirting with a lot of girls who were all also younger, including some of Ella's friends. When she confronted him, he sorts of gaslit her into thinking it wasn't flirting. He was also making a lot of comments about having children with Ella and how cute it would be to see her raise them. She told me she was absolutely not ready for that and also wanted to go to college and work and not be a CHM. Because of all of that, she was doubting her relationship, and I told her that I understood. She said she was scared of breaking up with him because he had become her whole life recently, and she didn't know what she would do without him. I told her that she was surrounded by people who loved her and would be there for her, and that she was a lot more than just Mark's girlfriend. I said that she knew my opinion on it, but that ultimately the choice was hers, and that I just wanted her to be happy. I also said I would be there for her no matter what. She told me that she will try to break up with him this week, and she'll let me know how it goes. I'll edit this post if I have more info. Also, again, thank you to everyone who gave advice and tried to help us. I really appreciate it. Edit. Okay, so I just want to say, some people in the comments seem to think that this is fake, and you know what? I can understand. And I don't really care. I'm not asking you to believe that my life is real or fake. And it's great that you don't just believe everything you see online. But I just want to say this. There are hundreds of people on here or elsewhere that share similar stories. I'm not really affected by people thinking I'm lying, mainly because I'm not the one in that situation. But some people might be. Some people come on here to share something that might have traumatized them, and the last thing they want is for others to think they're lying. So, if you don't want to believe me, that's fine, but the next time, keep that to yourself. It's fine to not believe something, but you don't have to say it, because it might make other people feel really bad. Comments where OP replied, "No, basically I was telling her that it was weird for him to date her. And she was telling me that she understood that older men dating younger girls can be creepy as a whole, but sometimes it's just because they're in love." Then I talked for a while about how men our age normally perceives 18 as literal children, so they don't go after them unless they're actually okay with dating children. And when I asked her that question, it really hit her, and she admitted that maybe it was actually weird. And then she talked about all the red flags, but it was kind of unrelated. I think it's the addition of both of these things that made her really come to the realization that the relationship was a bit weird. But what I didn't say in the post is, this took a really long time. We talked for over 3 hours, and what I posted is just a really big summary of all we said. I just tried to keep it short, but it wasn't as quick as it seems to be. To explain this in more details, I went through the guy's socials with my friends a few days ago, because we thought there might be other weird things going on, and we ended up finding info about his previous relationship, the one right before Ella. So, Ella told me at Christmas, so December 24th, that they had been dating for a few months. But when we searched his Facebook, we saw a post wishing happy birthday to a girl who he called his baby on December 12th. And this girl appeared in other posts where they were kissing, or he was calling her pet names, so we assumed she was his GF, which Ella confirmed afterwards. And this girl also looked very young. He at one point wrote something about her and said, "As soon as you're done with college," so we knew she was in college. And she looked between 20 and 25. And Ella then confirmed that she was 21. But yeah, basically it seemed like he was still with his ex while dating Ella, so I asked her if she knew about that. I also didn't think she would understand, but I think the many red flags she has been seeing in Mark recently contributed to that a lot. Were you ever loved if you think looking out for your younger relative makes you creepy? Didn't you have family members that were there for you growing up? Yeah, my friends and I are currently going through his socials. We've done Facebook already and found his last ex was around 20 to 24, and their relationship overlapped with his relationship with my niece. We've also made multiple fake accounts on dating apps as 18 to 22-year-old to see if he has a profile on there, and if so, if he would also go for a younger girl. OP is not an AH here, because his reaction was genuine given the age gap between his niece and her boyfriend, as well as her boyfriend's predatory history and red flags in their relationship. OP is not an AH because his reaction was immediately justified by his niece. So I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. In this scenario, the real AH is OP's niece's BF for being a predator. So I would give him 3.5 out of 5 scores on the AH scale. Delicious Leader 7639. AITA for bringing up just how much I actually do for our household to my wife. My wife, 41F, and I, 42M, have been married for 15 years. I apparently surprised her by being capable of doing household chores and tasks, which I didn't think much of. My mum always asked me to help out with chores when I was a kid, so I didn't think it was beneath me or anything. I do think I inherited her need to clean excessively, like it's so bad that I can't eat until a mess is dealt with. My mom is an amazing cook, my aunt was a literal chef at a fancy hotel, and my dad loved having barbecues. It was pretty natural to learn from them and pick up a thing or two. The only thing I didn't pick up was how to make a decent cup of tea or coffee. I'm genuinely awful at it. It got to a point where I was handling most of the household chores and taking care of cooking, which I prefer anyways, since she comes home exhausted. I've been asking our children, 11F and 9M, to do some minor tasks around the house and hopefully teach them this sort of thing too. She has a group of friends who hang out regularly. This time it was her turn to host the group at her home. I offered to take our children out for the day, and it was all set. Before we left, I had to finish up some things for work. The office space is practically on top of our living room, so I could hear what they were talking about the entire time. One of the friends asked how she always kept our house so spotless, and my wife just bragged about how she was responsible for it all. Then, they all started talking about their gripes with their marriages. A common theme was how unhelpful their spouses were. I felt pretty uncomfortable, so I just left the office and went out with the kids. I came back after they had left for the night and acted as normal until we got to our bedroom. I asked her what was up with that conversation they had, and pointed out that I did the cooking and cleaning in our marriage. She told me not to take it personally, and that she just wanted to fit in with the struggles of her friends. Now I just feel unappreciated, especially since I don't clearly remember any genuine gratitude for what I do from her. Since then, she's been pretty short with me. She says I'm weaponizing what I'm doing against her and holding it over her head. I don't expect her to compliment me each time I clean or defend me religiously, just a little, "My husband is pretty helpful actually. He does his share would be nice." I can't help but feel like her friends think I'm some sort of deadbeat who comes home to relax and neglect her. Update. I'm pretty shocked this post went as viral as it did, and I tried my best to speak to my wife yesterday. I just can't believe that this is the woman I married. I tried speaking with her, telling her that what she did wasn't that big of a deal, but was still not a nice thing to do. She didn't like me bringing it up again and just told me to suck it up and stop bitching about one mistake. She apologized, but in a tone that just sounded like she was just tired of dealing with this. I noticed her getting very heated and on the verge of starting an argument, so I backed off and switched to a different topic. I asked if we could adjust our duties at home to be fairer for both of us, since most of our management fell to me. I mean, pretty much 90% of things like cooking and cleaning, including planning for our date nights or vacations for our family, rely on me. I do think it's an issue that she gets to come home and just tell me that she's tired. Then she got up in my face, telling me I had no right to lecture her about chore duties when I'm practically at home most of the time. She completely refused to hear me out and basically told me that what we have works best for our situation. She threw me in my face that she was the moneymaker, and that balanced everything out in the end. Even this morning, she was pretty annoyed with me, coming downstairs in a bad mood. I'm very sure our kids noticed it too, but I drove them to school after they got ready. When I got back, I noticed that my wife left her packed lunch on our kitchen counter. So now I'm sitting here, just feeling like the woman I've known for 15 years hates me. I guess I'll have to push this issue properly even if she gets angry. She's been ignoring my texts and attempts to call her. I can't just let her act like this, especially in front of our children. Update 2. I think I'm just done at this point. I did something I never did before and went into her phone while she slept. We both know each other's passwords, so it wasn't really difficult. Some of the cheating comments got to me, and I felt pretty paranoid about this situation. Instead, I found a group chat with some of her work friends, different from the other friends she had over. It was just non-stop mockery of me and some of the stuff I did for her. She told them how embarrassed she feels to be with me, and that I dote on her like a parent and don't feel like her husband. The lunches I pack for her are humiliating because I add sweets and other treats I know she likes. Some of her co-workers teased her about the snacks I have in for her, and she admitted to just throwing them out at work. She doesn't have any issue eating them at home, but at work, she throws out my baking. She had some choice words to say about me in her chat, some of which I don't have the courage to type out here. One of her meme pictures was of me on my knees scrubbing a bathroom tile, edited to have some sort of dress on like I was some sort of housewife from the 1960s or something. I just closed her phone and left. I confronted her about the chat and the contents of it, which got her panicking. I focused on our kids this morning and left her to her own devices. It's not like she would have appreciated a kid's lunch anyways. Now she's texting me like crazy at the office, but I think I lost all respect for her and what she's become. Not only does she find me overbearing and embarrassing as a husband, but then I find out she mocks me to her friends and exposes some sensitive relationship issues to her group chat. This will probably be the last update, since I don't think she can come back from this. We'd just celebrated our 15th anniversary last month too. I feel like a loser now after seeing what my wife actually thinks of me. Update 3. I know I'm going to get some hate for my decision at the end of this all, but I gave my wife one more chance. She gave me a real apology for her actions and how she treated me about 2 weeks ago. In her own words, she let her friends' comments at work and her best friends affect her too much. My wife wanted to feel included in the groups by playing both sides, one that has a useless husband and one that has a clingy husband. She's not using them as an excuse, and did take full responsibility for how poorly she treated me, which is a plus. She suggested some sort of marriage counseling for us, and insisted on doing the planning herself to show me she's dead serious on wanting to make this work. She's copied me in her communications with a counselor, but it'll still be a while before our first appointment. She stepped up in the home too, doing more tasks without me asking. The compliments I used to get have also made a return, so I do feel a little more appreciated. My wife promised me that she wouldn't lie to her friend group anymore and give me the credit I deserve. The work friends I don't know about, their opinions on me will forever be as they are, even though she talked to them. Part of this feels disingenuous, since it took us getting into a bad spot for this to happen. Maybe it's just resentment talking. I just hope this works out for our sake and the kids. And no, she has not been cheating or had some guy in her ear telling her things. A lot of DMs are asking about that. Comments where OP has replied, I only have a problem with the work friends, but there's not much I can do. It's not like she can stop communicating with her co-workers or quit her job. We both work. She makes about 100K a year, while I make around 70K. She earns more, but she's definitely not the only income in our household. What makes my job great is that my boss lets me have a lot of flexibility, so I can work from home and take care of the house and kids as long as I give him a heads up. I don't think she could do it, purely because of her job. I've got a lot of flexibility and leeway with my boss. He knows I'm trustworthy. So, he allows me to work from home as long as I give him a head up beforehand. That allows me to do whatever I need to do at home or handle our children. She doesn't have that benefit, and genuinely comes home about 6 to 7 p.m. exhausted. OP is not an AH for standing up to his wife, who belittled his role in handling most household duties. OP has been supportive, and his wife's dismissive behavior is not justified in any way. She behaves entitled and ungrateful. Undervaluing and mocking her partner is extremely insulting. So, OP's wife is an AH here, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Shark Eva. I've been informed by a solicitor that my husband is having an affair. Yesterday morning, I was contacted by a solicitor. I was confused because I don't have any need for one for anything. She told me that her client is seeking a divorce from his wife due to the wife having an affair. Their investigator found the affair is with my husband, and the client asked the solicitor to inform me since my husband is married. She provided me with proof of the affair. My brother-in-law is to be married on Saturday. My husband is the best man and is already there to assist with everything. Me and my 5-month-old daughter were supposed to leave on Friday morning to join them. My husband is unaware that I know. I am shocked, but the proof is right in front of my eyes. I haven't told anyone, but I have asked me sister to come over after work. I'm going to ask if my daughter and me can stay with her. I don't think I can face him at the wedding. I don't want to hear excuses. My sister's husband is a solicitor, and while he does not do divorces, I'll ask if he can recommend someone. I have to talk to my sister, but I'm mostly just getting my thoughts out on here because I feel entirely scattered. Comments. Mission_definition_1. OP's husband is terrible. The fact that he can help someone, BIL, with their wedding, while cheating on his wife, is telling of his moral compass. This is my swamparg. You sound like a smart lady. Get a place to stay with your child. Get your ducks in a row and leave him. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Stoic sticks. Plus, be sure to take any important documents with you, birth certificates, social insurance card, passports, etc., and anything especially sentimental that would be hard to replace. Open a bank account at a different bank and move some money over. Update. I told my husband I had been exposed to COVID and could not attend the wedding. My sister helped pack, and she is letting me and my daughter stay with her until I find a flat. Someone I work with has a family member who has one up that I can afford that's available in January. When my husband returned home on the Monday, there was a note telling him I knew about the affair. The husband of the other woman was going to be filing for divorce later that week, and I would not be far behind. My sister's husband is a solicitor, and he recommended a divorce solicitor to me. My husband and I both have jobs. We don't own a home. At the advice of my solicitor, I opened a new bank account for myself, but I did not touch any of our joint accounts. I'm not stopping my husband from seeing our daughter, and my solicitor said the law will favor sharing of custody. Unless it is about our daughter, I told my husband to have his solicitor talk to mine. I won't discuss anything else with him. Once we have been separated for 2 years, we can get a divorce. My solicitor said there is no way to shorten the time requirement. Thank you everyone who showed me kindness. Edit. Yesterday morning I was contacted by a solicitor. I was confused because I don't have any need for one for anything. She told me that her client is seeking a divorce from his wife due to the wife having an affair. Their investigator found the affair is with my husband, and the client asked the solicitor to inform me since my husband is married. She provided me with proof of the affair. My brother-in-law is to be married on Saturday. My husband is the best man and is already there to assist with everything. Me and my 5-month-old daughter were supposed to leave on Friday morning to join them. My husband is unaware that I know. I am shocked, but the proof is right in front of my eyes. I haven't told anyone, but I have asked me sister to come over after work. I'm going to ask if my daughter and me can stay with her. I don't think I can face him at the wedding. I don't want to hear excuses. My sister's husband is a solicitor, and while he does not do divorces, I'll ask if he can recommend someone. I have to talk to my sister, but I'm mostly just getting my thoughts out on here because I feel entirely scattered. Comments. Linny Pixie. I can't imagine being legally tied to your ex for 2 years. Emily the Duck. That law will never not be stupid to me. Like he had the affair, he broke the marriage. Why does law say she has to be tied to him just in case? That's stupid. Medium_classroom2600. Which country hangs divorce for 2 years? Dang, this country should change their law. OP, Ireland. Divorce was not made legal in Ireland until 25 years ago. Before that, divorces were not allowed at all. Until 2019, a couple had to be separated for 4 years, not the 2 years it is now. Medium_classroom2600. Don't you have any strict law for punishing cheaters? OP. Divorce is no fault. It also would not make a difference anyways, as we aren't wealthy, don't own a home or any significant assets, and are both employed. Update 2. Background. My first 2 posts may be found in my post history, however, in summary. My husband had an affair. The other woman was also married. Her husband's solicitor informed me about the affair. I found out right before my husband's brother was to get married. I told everyone I was ill and stayed home. I moved in with my sister while my husband was away at the wedding. Our daughter was 5 months old when I found out about the affair. The update is that I am now divorced. I live in Ireland. It is a requirement that couples live apart for 2 years before they can be divorced. There are no exceptions under the law to this. It used to be 4 years, and up until 1998, divorce was not legal in Ireland at all. My daughter and I lived with my sister for almost 3 months before I moved us into our own flat. My husband and I did not own any property, and I legally had no authority to ask him to leave the flat we had while we were married. So I left instead. On the advice of my solicitor, I opened my own bank account and left our jointly owned accounts alone to be settled in the divorce. While we were living apart, my husband and I used an app to communicate about our daughter, and everything else was through our solicitors. I haven't talked to him about the affair, I haven't talked to his family or friends, and I don't have social media. My husband carried on seeing the other woman for several months after I moved out, so I'm sure everyone knows he had an affair, but that isn't my problem now. The only thing I talk with him about is our daughter and anything relating to her. We have joint custody, and I will pay him maintenance. Fault is not considered in a divorce, and an affair doesn't affect custody. I do not have to pay maintenance to my husband for himself, since he is already living with another woman, not the one he had an affair with, and plans to marry her right away now that we are divorced. If he had been living on his own and not about to get married, I would have had to pay him maintenance. I have never met the woman he had an affair with, or her husband or their children. My focus is on my daughter, and I am civil with her father for her sake. But I don't care about looking on social media or talking to him about the affair. I have never talked to him about it and never will. I only care about my daughter. Apologies if my update isn't exciting. I am divorced, there is no drama, and I know that's usually not exciting, but some people have been messaging asking for an update, and I wanted to say thank you to all the lovely people who offered me support during a terrible time. Comments. Camp 808. Actually, for a boring update, it's basically a very good outcome. He's someone else's problem now, and not having to pay him maintenance above all else is absolutely huge. Congratulations, OP. I hope you continue to heal and surrounded by folks who love you and your daughter. No -- 5200. I remember your story and have thought about you from time to time. You certainly handled everything with grace and dignity. I'm pleased that you and your daughter are doing well. Sounds like you're definitely better off without your ex. He sounds like a real prince. All the best to you going forward. I am not the OP. Please do not harass the OP. This is the best decision OP made after finding her husband was cheating. She is not an AH, gets 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP's husband is an AH, the bigger one, so I would rate him 4 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the last story from scary_listen. _6239. AITA, for not speaking to my brother because he ruined my relationship with my best friend? I, 21F, broke up with my boyfriend a month ago because he was insecure about my best friend, 20M. Eventually, I got tired of it and broke it off. My ex is my brother's, 23M friend. My brother asked why we broke up and I told him. Then he asked if I minded if they stayed friends, and I knew it would hurt him a lot if I said no, so I told him it was not a problem. I've noticed that he has been distant over the past few weeks. Last week, while I was talking to him and our older sister, 25, he seemed to be in his world, preoccupied with his phone. At one point, he made up an excuse about needing to do something in his room, which I realized was a lie. I followed him to his room and confronted him about his distance from me. I expressed my feelings, telling him it hurt that he was keeping his distance. I asked if he was angry with me for breaking up with his friend. He replied that he wasn't angry, that it was our lives, and he didn't care about the situation. He mentioned that he couldn't listen to me complain about my relationships when we both knew the real problem, and he wasn't interested in discussing it while I was in denial. I finally understand what he means. I broke up with my last 2 boyfriends because both had issues with how close I was to my best friend. I have known my best friend since we were 6 years old, and we have always been just friends. I have explained this to my past 2 partners, but they both had problems with our friendship. We had a big fight and didn't speak much for the next few days. I tried to talk to him a couple of times, but every time he kept repeating it and told me that I couldn't understand as I wasn't a man. Eventually, I had enough and told him that I expected better from him, that his way of thinking was and that men and women could just be friends. He told me that if I was so sure, why don't I text him and tell him that I felt lonely and to come over for some Netflix and chill. He reached inside his pocket and took out his keys, and he told me that if he said no, I could have the car. I refused at first, but I couldn't handle the smug smile he had on his face and decided to do it, as I was sure my friend would reject me anyway. So I texted my friend, and to my surprise, he said he would be right over. My brother saw the text and was being his annoying know-it-all self, laughing the whole time. I panicked and told my friend I was tired, and then the next day, I texted him that it was better if we stayed friends. He said he had had feelings for me for a long time, and that he couldn't keep it to himself anymore. He wanted us to try now that my boyfriend was out of the picture, but I only see him as a friend. Now, in 1 month, I have lost my boyfriend, and now, maybe even my best friend. And the worst thing is that maybe my brother was right, that I was the reason my relationships didn't work. But I'm also angry at my brother, and he noticed how distant I've been the last couple of days, and he even told me he did it for my good, and that if he didn't, I would keep letting that guy destroy all my relationships. But I still refuse to talk to him. But I also miss him, and I don't know if he is right, that he was just looking out for me. Edit? I don't know why people keep saying 3 boyfriends. I have only had 2 boyfriends. OP is not the AH because she genuinely believed her friendship with her best friend wouldn't impact her romantic relationships and was trying to maintain boundaries. While her brother forced her to confront a hard truth in an intrusive way, her feelings of betrayal are valid. OP's frustration is understandable, but her brother was also trying to help her see a pattern. So no one is an AH here. Let's now jump on to the next story from unusual_astronaut 766. Would I be an AH if I canceled Thanksgiving to keep my daughter-in-law away from her parents? Hello, I'm very emotional writing this and could use some advice. I am a mom of 3 adult sons, 30M, 27M, and 25M. My oldest son's name is Spencer, and he's been with his wife Sam since high school. They have a beautiful daughter together who is almost a year old. To be honest, Sam has become like a daughter to me over the years. She and Spencer live around 8 hours away by car, so I don't see them too often. But Sam and I typically talk on the phone once a week. She's never said anything bad about her parents to me in the past, but I can tell she seems tense around them. I also know she didn't like visiting home until she started spending holidays with us. I actually visited them for the weekend and had fun seeing my son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter. The night before I left, Sam and I stayed up late talking. I made a comment about how being a parent can be hard, and it's scary knowing you can't protect your kids from everything. I said that I always tried to educate my boys, give them the tools to stick up for themselves, and listen when something was bothering them. I said I know she'll do the same things for her daughter and do everything to protect her. Sam's face went white, and I asked what was wrong. She asked me if Spencer had told me anything. I asked what she was talking about, and she got teary. She opened up to me about the fact that her maternal grandfather abused her as a child, ages 9 to 11, and when she told her parents in her late teens, they didn't believe her and thought she might be remembering things wrong. It's since come out that the grandpa molested several of her cousins, and at least one of her little sisters. She's the oldest of 4 girls. Her parents now believe she was molested, but they've never apologized to her. Also, the few times they've talked about what happened, Sam's mum basically says she's relieved it wasn't that bad since the grandfather never penetrated her with his penis. Sam didn't want to discuss the specific details with me, but she said he did disgusting and humiliating things to her body. When Sam was telling me all this, she got more and more upset, and by the end of the conversation, she was crying so hard she could hardly breathe. I tried to comfort her and tell her how strong she is, but she was completely devastated talking about it. I've also known her since she was a teenager, and it's so hard to know the girl I knew was going through so much and navigating it on her own. I spoke to Spencer about the situation in the morning before I started driving home, and he said he's surprised she opened up to me about it because she hates talking about that period of her life. I told Spencer that my heart is broken for her, and I don't know how either of them tolerated her parents. Spencer says he dislikes them for how they treated Sam, but she still wants some relationship with them. He says that she gets anxious every time they go home for the holidays, and that there's usually a blowout fight at least one of the nights when they're there. I was originally going to host Thanksgiving and invite Sam's family. I always do this to be polite, and Sam appreciates that her sisters and parents are included. To be honest, I don't think I can stomach being in the same room as her parents. So soon after learning what they did to Sam, I asked Spencer what Sam would think if I canceled Thanksgiving this year, and our family visited them in the city instead. Her family would obviously be invited, but they haven't visited them once in the 5 or so years they've lived there, so the odds of them accepting are low. Spencer likes my idea, and thinks Sam would be relieved since it would give her an excuse not to see them this year. Basically, Spencer thinks she won't feel guilty if I'm the one making the decision and changing the plans. So would I be an AH for canceling Thanksgiving? If anyone has advice on how I can support Sam and navigate things with her parents, I'd really appreciate it. OP is not an AH for standing up for her daughter-in-law and keeping her away from her parents, who always belittled his concerns about being molested by her grandpa. Keeping distance from such parents is the best option. OP is not an AH, rather her daughter's parents and grandpa are AHs. I would rate her parents 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's grandpa deserves 5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP, I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Dependent-Clothes 350. AITA for kicking my sister out of my wedding because she made a joke about my husband's appearance? Throw away because I don't want my family finding this. This is a long one, so please bear with me. I'm honestly wondering if I went way overboard, but I still feel conflicted. I, 29F, recently got married to my wonderful husband, Dan, 30M, after dating for 8 years. We had a beautiful wedding, but there's been a huge fallout since that day that I need to sort out. Dan is kind, intelligent, and supportive, but he has a visible birthmark on his face that he's always been sensitive about. I've always loved him for who he is and think he's perfect just the way he is, but I know how hard it can be for him. He tends to blush easily, especially in situations where he feels uncomfortable or is the center of attention. I've tried my best to help him feel confident and assured, reminding him how attractive he is to me. My sister, Emily, 31F, has always been the jokester of the family. Growing up, she was the center of attention, always quick with a quip or a pun. While that made her fun to be around, it also meant that her jokes often crossed lines. At family gatherings, she'd poke fun at me, my parents, and even my friends. Although I could usually laugh it off, I've noticed that her humor tends to be at someone else's expense, which often makes me uncomfortable. When I introduced Emily to Dan for the first time, she made a comment about how nice it was that I found someone who could match my tomato red face. I brushed it off, but Dan looked a bit uncomfortable. I later spoke to Emily privately, explaining that jokes about his appearance make him feel self-conscious. She apologized, but insisted she was just trying to be funny. I let it slide, hoping she'd understand. But over time, she kept making these little digs, always framing them as jokes. I'd tried to change the subject, but it just felt like it became a running gag in our family. As the wedding approached, I had a lot on my mind. Planning everything was stressful, and I wanted it to be perfect for Dan and me. But I also knew I had to keep Emily in check. Before the wedding, I had a serious talk with her. I told her that while I appreciated her humor, I needed her to tone it down during the wedding, especially around Dan. She laughed it off and promised to behave, but I had my doubts. On the day of the wedding, everything was magical. Dan looked incredible, and I felt beautiful. The ceremony went smoothly, and when it was time for the reception, I was excited to celebrate with our family and friends. However, when it was time for speeches, Emily took the mic and started with a cute story about me as a child. Everyone was laughing, and I was feeling great. But then, she transitioned to Dan. She said, "Now, let's all raise a glass to my new brother-in-law." I always knew my name would marry a guy who could match her red-faced embarrassment. Her laughter echoed in the room, and for a moment, I felt the air get sucked out. I saw Dan's face drop, and he looked completely mortified. The room went silent. It was as if everyone was holding their breath. I don't know what came over me, but I felt a rush of anger and embarrassment. I jumped up from my seat, grabbed the mic, and said, "Emily, please leave. You're ruining this moment for everyone." The shock on her face was palpable. She stood there, frozen, then tried to laugh it off, saying, "It was just a joke. Come on." But I was firm. I didn't care if it was her idea of humor. I needed to protect Dan. She left the venue in tears, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. Some guests looked horrified, while others seemed supportive. I returned to Dan, who looked conflicted. He whispered, "I appreciate you standing up for me, but I think you overreacted. She didn't mean any harm." I felt a pang of guilt, but justified it by thinking about all the times she'd made similar jokes in the past. The rest of the night was a blur. I tried to enjoy our first dance and the cake cutting, but the tension loomed over us. My parents pulled me aside, clearly upset. They scolded me for making a scene on my wedding day, saying I embarrassed the family and ruined what should have been a joyful occasion. My dad said, "You should have just let it go. It was a joke." As the days passed, I felt the aftermath weighing on me. Emily hasn't spoken to me since the wedding. She posted on social media about how heartbroken she was, that her own sister couldn't take a joke, and how she was blocked from the happiest day of my life. My parents think I owe her an apology to keep the peace. And my mum keeps reminding me how important family is. It's become this pressure cooker, and I'm stuck in the middle. Dan, bless his heart, is trying to be supportive, but he wants to move on. He suggested I reach out to Emily and apologize if it means keeping the peace. I don't want to seem weak or like I'm backing down, but I also don't want to lose my sister. I feel like I'm being torn in two directions, defending my husband and keeping my family together. I keep replaying the wedding in my head, wondering if I went too far by kicking her out in front of everyone. Should I have let it slide one more time? Was I too quick to react in the moment? AITA for how I handled this? OP is not an AH for standing up for her husband. OP's sister's comments about OP's husband's birthmark are unjustifiable, especially when he is very sensitive about the mark. OP's sister is an AH for mocking OP's husband, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Her parents are also AHs for supporting and enabling Emily's behavior, so I would rate them 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP, I would give her 0 out of 5. Let's now jump onto the next story from kindly-cry-4974. AITA for not paying for a trip I couldn't attend on the first day that my brother found a replacement for and told me not to worry about, then asked me to pay for after the trip concluded. My brother, 28M, set up a houseboat trip on a holiday weekend with a group of close friends that had taken many trips in years before. In past trips, I, 30F, had invited him to, had made sure the important information was shared directly, and confirmed there was transport for everyone. In earlier years, everyone had paid the same, and as time went on, there was a preference to pay by room, which was great for couples, but sucked for singles that I pushed back on. On this trip, the first on a boat, I was initially asked to pay the same monetary amount for one of 2 curtain narrow beds below decks, as my brother and his wife together were going to pay for one of 2 full cabins with a door and windows upstairs. I pushed back, and my brother agreed to, in his words, pay part of my expense as a favor to me, since his friend had agreed to the price of the other narrow bed below. I didn't agree with his math, but the outcome was the same, so I let it go. Around the time I planned on sending him the agreed-upon number, he said I should also plan on paying into the TBD group shared grocery expenses, which would be determined on the first trip day. I have a food allergy and had already explained I planned to do separate groceries to avoid an allergic exposure as severity had been getting worse. He said he was pretty sure it would be fine, and I should still pay into the share, and I planned to iron it out when we got there by showing the folly of this at the grocery store, since the allergen is listed in almost every prepared food. There were about 30 emails, plus separate texts with my brother, amongst the group, and I zoned out at a certain point, assuming I would be driving out with my brother and his wife, the same as with every other trip I'd attended with him. I called the Thursday before the long weekend to make sure I hadn't missed anything, and learned they planned to meet at the boat midday Friday, not Saturday, information buried in the group emails, and had expected me to drive myself, because with their new dog, the back seat was taken. I had a work meeting Friday morning that was too late to change, or I would have packed up and tried to get a train home that night. I was in NYC working 14-hour days at the time, and had obviously made a number of incorrect assumptions, which, while not an excuse, explains how I got so lost. I had thought I was doing better emotionally after a difficult year, but wasn't in a great space, and felt like a failure of a person for mishandling the situation so badly. I was in tears, realizing how badly I had messed up, and also feeling triggered that this weekend of fun was turning into a messy 1-year anniversary of the same holiday 1 year before, where shortly after a traumatic experience supporting my grandmother while she died in hospice, my fiancé expressed that he was unsure if he still loved me / wanted to see other people / we broke up, and I returned to my apartment with my engagement ring on and anything of value owned by my fiancé missing. I'd been an emotional mess after, and was just starting to feel like maybe I had it together again. Travel from NYC to our home area was a 7-hour trip, and driving myself another 4 or 5 hours to get to the houseboat location was going to be beyond my physical capacity. I asked about meeting them on Saturday, wherever they were at that time, and he mentioned his MIL had wanted to attend, so he would see if she would take my place. I said I really did want to go on this trip, and I'd talk with our parents to see if there might be another solution. My dad offered to drive me on Saturday, so-called brother back, but he said MIL can go instead, so don't worry about it. I was disappointed, but also heard meeting me on Saturday was going to be difficult, so I let it go. After the trip concluded, I spoke with my brother to ask how it went. He said it went well, and then asked for my payment for the trip. I expressed confusion. He said he didn't feel comfortable charging his MIL after she had just paid for a celebratory restaurant outing after his master's degree graduation. For context, he works in finance and his employer paid for the grad school degree. He was already out earning me, married to a working spouse, and a homeowner. I said, I'm confused about why you would discourage me from attending the trip a day late. Tell me you found someone to take my place and to not worry about it, then ask me to pay for another person attending in my place because they paid for something else for you recently. I said, if after really thinking that through from my perspective, you still think it is fair to charge me for the trip, let me know and I will pay you. But for the record, that does not sound fair to me. Brother never asked me again about the money, but has slowly become increasingly distant. And recently my other brother, then 32M, now 43M, encouraged me, now 41F and disabled, to pay him back, saying I should have paid for the trip before it started anyway, that it would have been incredibly expensive for them to move the houseboats a day after docking at their destination, to reach a place where I could board, and that it was a silly thing to make a big deal about, and that it still annoyed our brother, now 38M, who had discussed it with him on their other trips. They have been going on annual houseboat trips and others since without inviting me. I'm conflicted. On one hand, I feel like I was getting nickel and dimed even before the trip started, which, considering my generosity with this brother, then 28M, now 38M, when we were younger, rubs me the wrong way. I know if I had paid in advance, I would have asked if the MIL was okay paying me back for taking my place, or would have discussed how much of the expense she planned to cover, but more likely would have insisted on attending the second day, which would have been a pain for the group to accommodate. I feel like I am being painted as the AH when I made a human mistake that I apologized for, but also would have done a ton to accommodate if the roles had been reversed. OP is not an AH for not paying for the trip, because her brother had told her not to worry about skipping it, since his mother-in-law was supposed to fill the spot. Now, OP is not responsible for paying for the trip she didn't go on. Demanding money from OP seems to be unfair. For this reason, OP's brother is an AH, and I would rate him 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from Grocery Puzzle headed 5. Would I be an AH for not telling an ex-friend her husband is cheating on her? So, my ex-friend, who I'll call A, met her husband through me. He was actually in a relationship with another good friend of mine, who I'll call B, but they were from separate friend groups, so didn't know each other outside of this house party I threw. Now, this husband, who I'll call C, was tolerated by me and other friends due to B, but as time went on, we saw a lot of red flags in his behavior towards B. They eventually separated, to our relief. However, next thing I know, A and C got together. Turns out they had exchanged numbers at my party, and had stayed in contact since, yes, while he was still with B. After B and C separated, more of the truth came out, and turns out our suspicions were right. He had been emotionally and occasionally physically abusive, so I was pretty horrified that he was now dating another friend of mine who had no idea of his relationship with B. I confided in a mutual friend, who I'll call D, and who was closer to A than me, about my concerns, and let's just say it didn't go down well. D told A about my concerns, and was basically told to mind my own business. However, D and A's own sister reached out to me several times over the next couple months to discuss their own concerns about C that they'd witnessed with their own eyes. A continued her relationship with him, though. He changed his faith to align with hers, which was a huge deal. While not a virgin, in her early 20s, she vowed celibacy until marriage, and C agreed to the same. Throughout this, I remained friends with B, and, rightly or wrongly, relayed a few things back to her. She had been struggling to come to terms with her separation from C. Not because she loved him anymore, but due to trying to make sense of the abuse she had endured. Despite now being in a relationship with A, C still tried to contact her on a semi-regular basis. When B's grandmother died, C went to great lengths to try and get in contact, despite being told to leave her alone. Now, word got around that I was still friends with B, and that B knew things about A and C's relationship that she wouldn't otherwise know. I understand that I could be seen as a gossip, and I totally get that. But it genuinely wasn't my intention. I was seeing C's poor and somewhat stalkerish behavior towards B, and felt that A should know. But after her reaction towards me in the beginning, the most I could do was keep D aware of what was going on, and let her choose what to do with the information. Essentially, it all blew up. I got mad at me and D for talking about her relationship, and I was voted off the island. I also grew apart from B for unrelated reasons, so my friendship group, overnight, got very small indeed. Despite acknowledging that I was trying to be helpful, even D took a side. I gained a reputation as an untrustworthy gossip, and didn't speak to anyone for 2 years. I watched from afar as A and C got married and had a child. All looked well from the outside, but by this point, I didn't care that much anymore. I had my own life stuff going on that needed my attention, so I didn't waste too much energy on them. Last week, I met up with B for the first time in 2 years. We discussed our own fallout and put a lot of stuff to rest. It was extremely cathartic as I had missed her a lot. She also filled me in on A and C drama. C was still being a weirdo stalker, turning up to one of her shows. She loves performing with another woman who wasn't his wife, but turns out was cheating on his wife with another mutual friend. He does seem to like to keep his circle small. I have no reason to believe she'd lie about it, and it makes sense. The mutual friend C slept with was B's best friend, but was the reason the gossiping got back to A and C, and I was always confused as to why this friend would go behind B's back to tell them what was being said. Turns out she was in love with C, and despite C getting married and having a child with another woman, believed he loved her too. I want to stay out of it, and I will. But I also feel bad about knowing and not saying a damn thing. So, WibTA for staying out of this one. TLDR. Friend's husband is cheating on her, but already exploded when I tried to warn her about her husband's reputation when they first got together. Caused me to lose a lot of friends, but new information is making me feel bad about keeping it to myself. OP is not an AH here, because she has already tried to warn A about C's behavior, and suffered a significant fallout as a result. Given A's previous reaction, it is best for OP to stay away from her ex-friend. Let's now jump on to the next story from Crap Kid Throwaway. My husband is better than my best friend's husband. AITA? I'm writing this post because my best friend's Kate husband, Bert, called my husband, Tim, an asshole. I have historically kept my opinion of Bert's behavior to a minimum on the grounds that good friends say their piece once and then love each other through relationships. But I'm asking internet strangers to be the judge. I am traveling for work. Kate is stuck at home, working, at 7 months pregnant on modified bed rest. Generally during the week, I drop over once or twice to bring her family some dinner. Tim cooks extra portions once a week to share, cheer her up, read her oldest a couple of bedtime stories so that mom can go to bed early and get some sleep. Bert works an office job. Stressful, I'm sure, but during her pregnancy, he's been working longer and longer hours. Salaried, not overtime. She's been sad and a bit lonely. Yes, I've suggested counseling. With that for background, this evening she and I were texting. It was about 6-ish, and she got a craving for a taco place near my house, and importantly, near Bert's office. She says she asked him to grab her some on his way home. He says he's not stopping. He's got work at home and she should just DoorDash something close. This makes her extremely sad. She's saying irrationally sad, but you be the judge, because he used to surprise her with her favorite tacos, and now he can't be bothered. As one does, I tell Tim. I'm 3 states away, so it was just part of our chat, as I was getting back to the hotel and getting ready for a work dinner. I get back from dinner, and Tim had gone and picked her up tacos, remembered the bag of things I'd collected for her, and the kid that were in my car, and pulled a tuna casserole from the freezer. Bert hates tuna casserole. He dropped them off on the porch, and just texted her that there were some things I wanted her to have. Then Bert gets home. Did he bring tacos, coloring books, or a good attitude? No, he did not. He called Tim to tell him that he was an asshole for showing him up. Other colorful language was also used, including some fairly sexist nonsense. He also texted me telling me to keep my husband away from his wife. Tim did respond rudely when Bert called. Kate says he told Bert he was a failure as a human, a man, a father, and a husband. Apparently, that caused Bert to scream expletives so loud their daughter started to cry. Not good. Tim then hung up on Bert, blocked him, and texted Kate that if she needed someone in an emergency, she knew where to call. But he wasn't putting up with her husband any longer. It's a giant cluster, and I have no idea what's going to happen. My husband feels bad things escalated so much, particularly since their daughter was crying. He feels like an asshole at the moment. Obviously, Bert thinks he's an asshole. I think he's a sweet man. What do you guys think? Update. I apologize for screwing up the title last time. I was trying to be brief and wound up being wildly disappointing. My apologies. Hopefully this is more effective. This update is shared with Kate and Tim's permission. For reasons, Bert can go f*** himself. Bert did email Tim this morning to apologize. Bert said he had forgotten I was out of town, and he didn't realize that Tim was dropping off the meal train food. It was a weird email for many reasons, but Tim responded politely, if non-committal. Tim hasn't changed his view of Bert in part because of what happened between Bert and Kate this afternoon. Bert also texted me to apologize, but I didn't get his message until after I landed, and by then everything else had happened. I've elected not to respond. Bert went home around noon after staying at a hotel last night. Kate's sister had taken their daughter to the park, so Bert and Kate could talk it out. Short version is that Bert has been avoiding Kate because she's not happy during this pregnancy. I mentioned in a comment that Kate had been married previously, and shortly after her first husband died, she had complications in a pregnancy that forced her on bed rest. Unfortunately, her son didn't make it. Her current pregnancy is bringing up a lot of painful memories, and she's scared she won't be able to make it to full term. So, yes, she's not as cheery as she was when she was pregnant with their daughter. It's a difficult time. Bert is frustrated and angry that she's not happy, so he's been staying late and ignoring her until she stops doing that. I know that sounds horrid, but I think they could have worked through those feelings. But as he was explaining how he felt, he said she should be glad her son wasn't there, because otherwise she wouldn't have this life at all. Yeah, that still knocks the wind out of me. It's so cruel. She did talk to him about that statement, but the explanation doesn't get better. In any event, for her that was just the end. She told him she was done, they can work out joint custody, but the marriage was over. She called her sister, and she and her husband encouraged Bert to leave. Currently, Kate's not angry or sad or panicked. She's just done. Personally, I'm surprised since they've weathered some fairly things, including infidelity by him, but I guess that was the line. In any event, her D&D friends are over there for Saturday games night, and they are eating waffles. She thought it was important for the internet to know that waffles are appropriate separation food. In terms of her well-being, which many kind souls were worried about, they have a prenup. The house is hers, his family property is his. I'm sure there will be a fight over custody, but she will be financially okay. In any event, she has family and friends who will help and support regardless of what happens. OP and her husband are not AHs for being kind to their pregnant friend, whose husband doesn't care about her. Instead, her friend's husband is an AH for not taking care of his wife. For his negligence, I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. And OP's husband deserves 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Brendan the Jet. AITA for cutting ties with my brother-in-law and for being upset with my wife for her part in it, below. I'm sorry for the length. I'm 33M, a happily married man, and my wife is my best friend. We are supposed to be a team and have each other's backs and best interests at heart. It's a cliche, it's cringe, but it's true. However, something has come up and it has me doubting and looking at her differently. I want to know AITA for being upset with her for all this. Long story short, about a year ago, my wife asked me to sell a spare vehicle that I was doing nothing with to her brother. His fiancé and him shared a vehicle, and it wouldn't do since they were moving to another state. Very reliable, nothing flashy, KBB at $5,000 to $6,000. She knew that I never used it. I definitely didn't need the money, and I'm still not in a position where a loss would hurt me or matter to me. I didn't want to do it because if something did happen, I didn't want to be blamed or guilted or whatever. She assured me that wouldn't happen. He was a stand-up guy, etc., etc. Went ahead and did it. Huge discount. $1,500 opposed to KBB. She wasn't pushing me to sell it, but I could tell that she really wanted me to. And her brother and I were on pretty good terms back then. I even went ahead and said they could make payments due to moving expenses being pretty heavy. They offered to come up with something before the moved on June 10th. I said if they did that, then they wouldn't have to make a first payment until August. They came up with $250 and moved to Tennessee. Now from June to August, he ignores me. Normally, he used to respond to my calls or texts almost immediately. So when he ignored my 4 or 5 texts, nothing aggressive, mind you, just casual, "Oh hey, how's it going out there?" Or, "Hope everything is going well. Haven't heard from." I became a little hesitant, but not concerned. After all, I truly didn't and don't need the money. Then I find out he's talking to my wife pretty regularly but ignoring me. He finally answers me at the end of August and says he will send me something by the end of the week. Well, the end of the week comes. He continues to ignore me. August turns into November. He's continually talking to my wife. She is talking with him like nothing is wrong, talking to him like everything is fine, never mentioning me or the situation with me once. Finally, I've had enough. I told him if he can't make the payments, I'll take the car back because my dad's friend will give me $6,300 cash on the spot. No hard feelings, but I'll just take the car back. He responds with sunshine and rainbows and apologies and promise after promise. I explain it's not the money, but the principle. I just needed communication and a little appreciation for doing a favor I never wanted to do that none of his friends or family would have done. He swears he will get me something by the end of the week. Promise, excuse, promise, excuse. The end of the week comes, then the month, then the end of the next month. My wife continues to talk to him as happy and as normal as ever. I lose it on him. He explodes and says some things he could never take back. The argument turned into something that would end our relationship forever. Well, all this time he's been coming back to Colorado almost every month. So I ask, when is he coming back so he can bring the car? He says it'll be a year or two. At the time I'm working a lot and can't just drop everything and head out there. I go to get it transported. It'll be about $1,900 to do so. I make arrangements with him to do it, and then, on the day of transport, he hides the vehicle. I had to pay half up front and lose out on the money. I explain to my wife I'm done and he's out of my life forever. I also find out that either before I said I'd take the car back or after, he trashed the vehicle. Wrecked the hell out of it. Trashed it inside. It all up. I found out that my wife knew about that. I found out that since then she has kept along with talking to him and never one time getting upset with him or yelling at him or even just mentioning it once to him. I then find out that 2 months or so he drove the car back here. She not only knew about it, but also went and saw him. She knows how hard I've been trying to get it back from him. I won't call the cops. Just can't. I'm not that guy. But she saw him in it, didn't tell me, continues talking to him. And now I'm doubting everything and seeing her differently and am more than hurt and upset. She says I'm overreacting and being dramatic. What do I do? AITA? Am I overreacting? WTF. OP is not an AH for feeling disappointed and abandoned. He helped his brother-in-law by selling him his spare car at a significant discount. However, in return, he was ignored, lied to, and disrespected. To make matters worse, OP's wife did not support him. Given these circumstances, OP's reaction is completely justified. On the other hand, OP's brother-in-law is the AH in this situation, and I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP's wife is also an AH for not standing up for her husband, so I would rate her 1.5 out of 5. OP is not at fault in this scenario.